This is kind of my bug out bike. Well, hello bike farmers. Thanks for clicking in. So here's another personal bike of mine. We're gonna give you a nice close look at this true oddball of bicycles. I really don't even know with this bike. This is a custom Appel racing cycles I found on Facebook Marketplace a couple years ago. I saw it and I had to have it. I didn't even know, it just kind of looked like it might be my size. With this crazy head tube, the weird geometry, 26-inch wheels. I didn't know what to think, but I did know the name Appel. Mike Appel was one of the early high-end builders for Trek, who branched out on his own in the 80s and started making custom-built race bikes. This one says special custom on it. I don't know what that means. I can imagine that it was a special custom build because I've never seen anything like it. I don't know, is it a mountain bike? Is it a road bike? Is it a cyclocross bike? Truly bizarre. Anyway, when I got it, it had flat bars and a riser stem. I got it from somebody who was probably about 70 years old, and he got it from a friend of his who died. So somebody had this thing built for some reason, and the front end of this thing is jacked way up. It's got a really bizarre head tube angle, bizarre seat tube angle. The geometry is just all over the place. And I know that Mike Appel was a bit of a recluse in the industry. He was doing things that nobody else was doing, trying new things, stainless steel, brazing, or welding. I don't know. He was just doing all sorts of things. He's very experimental and just like to push the envelope and try new things. Now we do know from underneath it's stamped that it's a 1992. So that's interesting because in the 90s, there was a mountain bike race in northern Wisconsin, the Schwamigan 40 mountain bike race. And I think Greg LeMond won it one year. In 1993, a guy named Gene Oberpriller won the Czech 40 on a Bridgestone XO-3, which is another oddball bike. And this is similar to an XO-3 with the 26-inch wheels and kind of road geometry, you know, the cantilever brakes. There's some things that are pointing Bridgestone XO-3 1992 is right in that era. So I think that's what this was, because there was a trend there too in the early 90s. It was thought that if you had skinnier tires on a mountain bike, they'd go faster. A little different than what we think today. These are spec'd at 1.8s, but there's like hardly any clearance down here in the chainstays. So I'm guessing the bike was made 26 by 1.5 with a little bit of room for tread and for mud clearance and that kind of thing. I'm going with 26 by 1.5. My least favorite tire size, by the way. These are the Rene Hurst Natchez Pass 26 by 1.8 inch extra light casings. They roll really fast. This bike rides great. I mean, it's unbelievable how good it rides. Take a closer look. I have built it up to my specs with stuff that I kind of had laying around. Kind of a hodgepodge mishmash of parts. It's a really neat bike. It's my coolest bike. It's my oddest bike. It's one of my favorite bikes. I have this little 15-mile loop that I go and ride around in the wildlife area. There's some gravel trails. It's about 1 water bottle's worth of a ride, about an hour long. It's one of my bug out bikes. Yeah, it's fun. Without further ado, let's take a closer look. I think it's funny that we all look at the rear derailleur on every bike to kind of figure out what spec it is. Anyway, these 7-speed XT rear derailleurs are my all-time favorite rear derailleurs. So on bikes like this, I always put it on there. Nice Dior crank. I ended up getting some Race Face Chester red pedals for it because it looks really good with the red in the frame. That is Shimano X-Age 500 CX front derailleur. That was on the bike when I got it, so I just left it. It was kind of built up as a hybrid thing. Anyway, I put on a Suntour Barcon shifter, which we'll look at in a little bit, but there you get the sound of it, right? So I have it set up friction, 7-speed, which isn't ideal. It's not as nice as my 11-speed friction, because I am hunting for gears quite a bit, but it kind of gives that classic feel. I would imagine that this was a bar end shifter bike back when it was built. I can, just kind of put myself in the shoes of the guy that had it built, and Mike, when he was building it, and I'm thinking it was a drop bar bike with bar end shifters, so that's what I put it back to. The wheels are really interesting. So these are Shimano STX I don't know if you can see that, but it says special edition hubs. So STX was kind of the middle of the range Shimano mountain bike stuff from back in the day. But this little gray part in there, it says special edition. I have never seen another set of these hubs in my life. These wheels were given to me by a former Trek employee. Yeah, Matrix was Trek's parts brand before Bontrager, and they're the single track pros. Again, I've never seen another pair of these rims. So more Oddball stuff. I thought, hey, it's from the era. These are definitely from the early 90s. It's an Oddball. It's like a match made in heaven. The colors match and everything. So I was really glad to find a home for these wheels. These are XTR cantilever brakes, which I don't think I've ever seen another pair of those anywhere in the wild. But I had them in my parts bin, and I thought, hey, this is a fancy racing bike. Put those on there. And I had these orange Cool Stop pads. So they say Compass on them because they're older, because I can't imagine that anybody else is buying extra light 26 by 1.8 inch road tires. They were new old stock a year or two ago when I bought them. They are very nice rolling tires, just like all my other Rene Hurst tires. Into the seat cluster there, you can kind of see some of Mike's handiwork. This is a fillet brazed bike. I think it's bronze nickel solder. You kind of build it up around the joint onto the steel, and then you got to file it away and make it nice and smooth and presentable. Otherwise it just looks like a bunch of blobby mess. Mike was a master, clearly. Very nice fillet brazed seat cluster there. I got my Brooks Flyer saddle on it. This is basically a B17 with a bunch of springs. Really softens up the back end. Like I said, I kind of use it as a gravel bike, so it makes things tolerable. Now I'd think it'd be a cyclocross bike. Usually cyclocross bikes have the cables running on the top of the top tube because you got to shoulder the bike a lot. But the brake cable on this one goes underneath the top tube, so that's a little different. Old vintage Elite bottle cage in my parts bin. That matches the bike pretty well. There's the Appel logo, Appel Racing Cycles. And here's a race bike builder. So racing was likely in mind for this. There's some of those gorgeous fillets, and look at the size of that head tube. It's a Tioga headset. This is a Simworks stem that I had laying around. It would be cooler to have a quill stem on this bike, but I didn't have any that really made the bike ride well. These are Nitto handlebars, kind of have an oddball shape to them. They have really deep drops, really long flats. Here's a Barcon shifter. Gold Ronnie Romance, go check out his channel if you haven't yet. But these are his bags under his brand at Ron's Bikes, and this is his logo. And it is absolutely perfect for this bike. I could not believe how well it matches and how good it looks. It's a nice waxed canvas, very cool. Go check out Ronnie's stuff. We share a lot of the same cycling philosophy, kind of came from the same era. So here's a look at the bike while it's on the ground, gives you an idea of how truly bizarre the geometry is. I don't know if I have a good way to measure the geometry. Maybe I could try. Okay. So I rigged up this protractor here, and I got my level out, 74-degree head tube. And then the seat tube, that looks pretty close. And the seat tube is also 74. 74, 74. But it's actually a very comfortable, spry, fun little bike. This is one of those nice benefits of living so close to the mothership, as I call it, Trek headquarters. You know, it's only 10 miles down the road. So we get a lot of oddball stuff. I find cool parts that come through, like these wheels. You know, they were sitting in somebody's garage for 2 decades before they ended up here, and then it took me another 5 years before I found a bike for them. You just don't know who's got what in their garage. I've found frame building tools in garage sales here. As a mechanic, I really geek out on all this handcrafted cycling stuff, especially something as cool as Appel Racing Cycles. Special when you find them. Now I have one, and it's the weirdest thing I have, and I love it. Thank you so much for watching this far. If you want to go a little more in depth into bike farming, ask some questions, read some answers to other people's questions, that sort of thing, that's going to be happening over at my Patreon. If you want to know the key to my heart, it's with a $sign. And if you look, you can give super thanks. It's a heart with a $sign in the middle of it. Click that and you can send money straight to me. That's the best way. I love getting super thanks. Now, if you don't have money, that's okay too. You can support the channel by liking this video, sharing it, subscribing to the channel, and of course, don't forget the notification bell so you and your bike can stay tuned.